time to try another recorded lecture, this time on the digestive system. So here we are in anatomy, digestive system, and body metabolism, chapter 14. We'll look at both the anatomy and physiology of the digestive system by starting with two main groups of organs. You have organs found in the alimentary canal and organs also that are considered accessory organs. Now, before we talk about them specifically, let's just talk about the digestive system in general. Your digestive system does four basic things. It takes in food, that would be ingestion. It breaks it down physically and chemically into nutrient molecules, so that would be the actual digestion. And then it absorbs the nutrients into the bloodstream, so the absorption. The indigestible remains are then defecated from the body. So the body gets rid of the waste, what it can't digest, it defecates. So your digestive system takes the food in and ingests it, breaks it down chemically and physically by digesting it, absorbs then the nutrients into the bloodstream, and rids the body of the waste. All right, I should probably mention that not only is this chapter 14, but it starts on page 468 in our Merriam text. So those organs of the alimentary canal do exactly what we just went through: the ingestion, digestion, absorption, and defecation. The accessory digestive organs, these would be like your teeth, tongue, and digestive glands. They assist this process of digestive breakdown. This is a picture that I took. It's found in your book on page 470, the basic floor plan of your digestive system. You can see everything's nice and labeled, nice and in color. Okay, let's look at the organs of the alimentary canal. You can refer back, if you'd like, to the slide previous to this to see another look as we go through, or you can have your book open to page 470. The GI tract, another name for your alimentary canal. Continuous coiled hollow muscular tube. In a cadaver, it's about 30 feet long. In an actual living person, it's going to be shorter. But you can see, if you were to take food in, the ingestion part, if you were to take the food in, you take it in through the mouth, it passes through these structures. So these are the actual organs the food passes through as it's broken down, and then as it's defecated from the anus. Okay, we're going to start with the mouth. Just like I said, this is where the food enters. The oral cavity is mucous membrane lined. It's surrounded by your lips, cheeks, the palates, your tongue, your tonsils. Do you know why? It's a part of your body's defense system. What type of tissue that would be? Let you think about it a minute. That's your lymphatic tissue. Your tonsils are made of lymphatic tissue. And then another term for chewing of the food is mastication. We talked about the muscles of mastication when we studied the muscular system. What other part is involved here that helps break down the food? What's the one thing that wasn't mentioned if you look back at this list? Let's look back at the picture. Can you see on the right-hand side the important addition there for breaking down food? That's right, saliva. Saliva mixes with the food and helps break it down. So that's all in the mouth. Now the food passes on through the pharynx. You can see the common passageways, which we've talked about when we were talking about the respiratory system. The muscle layers. This is what actually propels food through not only the pharynx, but also through the esophagus, because you've got alternating layers of muscle. One goes circular, the other goes longitudinal, and because the contraction is like an inchworm or a slinky, It propels the food through into the esophagus. The esophagus is the passager that conducts food. There's no digestion or absorption, any of that takes place here. It's just for the transporting. You should have read about these different tissue layers when you're doing the packet. The 4 basic tissue layers. You find these tissue layers in all of the alimentary organs now, starting with the esophagus, all the way to your large intestine. So these 4 layers will be part of those walls. The mucosa is epithelial, submucosa is connective, and if you remember, connective tissue does have blood vessels, it's vascular, and there also has nerve endings. 2 muscle layers, and then the outermost layer would be the serosa. Now, another name for the serosa would be your visceral peritoneum. This outer layer of all of these alimentary canals is going to be continuous with the parietal peritoneum via the mesentery, and we'll talk about the mesentery as we go through the digestive system. So the visceral peritoneum is the outermost layer, another name for the serosa, continuous with the parietal peritoneum. All right, on past the esophagus. What's next? That's right, your stomach. You can see a picture of it on page 474. It's figure 14.4. It's just a temporary storage tank. Notice that it has 3 different layers of muscle. Same thing, it's helping propel food. It's also physically digesting the food. It's churning the food. It's mixing it, pummeling if you wish, to digest it, to break it down. When we dissect the mink, we will notice the rugae, the internal folds inside the stomach. We'll open it up. Extensions of that peritoneum, of that lining, of that layer, are called the lesser and greater omentum. And it's in your stomach where protein digestion begins. Most digestive action in your stomach is not going to occur until you get to the pylorus or the pyloric region, which you should have labeled on your diagram the other day. And now we don't say that it's food. We actually give it the name chyme, C-H-Y-M-E. So as it leaves your stomach, it's referred to as chyme. Now, what do you know is at the beginning and end of the stomach? What are those circular muscles called? At each end of the stomach, there are sphincters. Sphincters. Very important to know about those on either end. All right, as we continue, I'm going to just have you answer these questions right on your note sheet. So you probably want to set this on pause because I'm going to keep going because I've only got 15 minutes. All right, so pause, answer the questions right in your note packet. Small intestine, major digestive organ, longest section of the GI tract, that means it's about anywhere from 8 to 20 feet long. When you look at the small intestine, it's broken into 3 subdivisions. The first is the duodenum, that makes up about 5% of its length. The jejunum is 40%, and then the ileum is the 60%. So, okay, that makes 105. I can't do math, I admit it. But it gives you an idea of, relative to each other, how long they are. So what happens in the small intestine? You can find a picture of it on page 477, figure 14.7. That pyloric sphincter, which is between the stomach and the small intestine, controls the chyme amount. So it's letting chyme out of the stomach and into the intestine gradually. At the time the food enters the duodenum, or excuse me, the chyme enters, it's also receiving digestive enzymes to help with the digestion. Completion of protein and carbohydrate digestion occurs in this part of your alimentary canal or of the GI tract. So we've got an increase of surface area produced by the villi. Villi are the finger-like projections. On the villi are microvilli, which are like little brushes. They're found on the mucosa cells that line the small intestine. The folds of the mucosa and the submucosa layers, which we talked about earlier, that are found in all of the alimentary canal from the esophagus on, they also help increase the surface area. So again, this is where we see that we've got digestion being completed. And so we want to make good use of the surface area of this organ. It's also going to be where we have absorption occurring. Because what's the next organ that food passes into? That's right, the large intestine. Larger in diameter than the small intestine, but shorter in length. It dries out that waste, the indigestible food, by absorbing water. That's why it's eliminated as solid feces. If you were to take your large intestine, you could divide it into 5 sections. Of course, that wonderful appendix that doesn't have a purpose except to accumulate bacteria. That's why we have appendicitis at times, or people have appendicitis because of the bacteria. So there's your large intestine. Again, this is where we're preparing waste to be removed. You should have labeled the ileocecal valve. It is the junction where the large intestine and small intestine join. That's why it's ileo, which means ileum, and cecal, which is cecum. So it's where those two come together. There are 4 parts to your colon: ascending, transverse, descending, and then the sigmoid sections. And then at the very end, the rectum, anal canal, and anus. Another sphincter is involved. Let's see, what can I add? In the large intestine, there is no villi present. There are goblet cells located on the wall, on that mucosa. And guess what they produce? Mucus. And they lubricate the passageway. The external anal sphincter is voluntary. That's a skeletal muscle. Now remember, when we've talked about the different muscles, cardiac, smooth, and skeletal, our organs, visceral organs, are typically smooth muscle. The external anal sphincter, you can control. That is a skeletal muscle. The internal involuntary sphincter is a smooth muscle. So I'll let you think about that one for a minute. All right, so we've got ending with the large intestine here. And a few more questions to answer. So going back, looking at your notes thus far, go ahead and within your note packet, answer these questions. And we will talk about these 3 and the first 3 that you answered halfway through the notes. Any questions we'll talk about in class as a class. But this ends another exciting day of flipped lecture on the iPad, I hope.